At the Centennial Regional Arena, I'm Tyler King alongside Nathan Crosby as we get set for Game 5 of the AJHL South Semifinal. The Brooks Bandits will host the Drumheller Dragons tonight with their second chance at punching their ticket to the AJHL South Final for the 7th consecutive year. Nathan, there are a lot of things that can and can't be said about Game 4. It was a real tough one from a Brooks perspective. On the PK, an absolute ton against the best effort Drumheller had put out over the course of that series. In the third period, a goal from Jake Tice that clearly goes in. It's no goal because the whistle went first. And then moments later, a Drumheller goal goes in the net and gives them a 3-2 win. There's a lot of reason for the Bandits to have some lingering frustration, but they can't allow any of that to seep through. The simple fact was, if we look back at Game 4, they weren't necessarily the better team, particularly in the first period when they got outshot 12-6, and there's lots of room for improvement for Brooks going into Game 5.
Well, we knew the Dragons were going to come out with everything they got in Game 4, an elimination game, and their best players really shone. Hunter Verostic, their goaltender, had his best game of the series. Tyler Kreklowicz, who is playing his final year of junior hockey, he had his best game of the series. Brett Edwards had 2 goals. That's why you got him from the Fort McMurray Oil Barons. So the players that Drumheller needed to step up rose to the occasion, and that was critical for Drumheller to keep this series going. From the Brooks point of view, I mean, you had to expect that Drum was going to come with that sort of firepower. It's tough. It's tough when you have to be on the PK all game. It's tough that there's those 2 calls in the third period, the no goal that the Bandits had because the whistle went early, and then the winning goal, which was very close to not going in. So a lot of things working against you in that game. It sets Brooks, I think, up nicely, though, for this game, that they now have a lesson. They know they're coming off a loss. They know that they're not invincible, that, yes, Drumheller, being a good team, it was capable of beating them. And so now, when you're back in the CRA, you're back on your rink where Drumheller hasn't played their best hockey in this series, things should be lining up perfectly for you to finish off this series tonight.
Not to mention, I mean, ticket sales are strong already. We're expecting a really good crowd at the CRA, and that's really paid off for the Bandits in these playoffs so far. And there is, I think, Nathan, a lot of room for improvement. I mean, there wasn't much in terms of scoring depth and chance depth in Game 4. It was mostly that top line, and Will Guerin, of course, had both of the goals. And the power play, it did not convert in Drumheller in Games 3 and 4 after having a pretty darn good start to the series. Overall, the penalty kill has still been fantastic. It finally gets scored on in Game 4, but, I mean, geez, it took 16 power plays for Drumheller to finally do that. From the Bandit perspective, if they can create a replica of Games 1 and 2 here in the CRA, it should be a win for them and an advancement to the South Final, but the simple fact is Drumheller's not going to make it that easy tonight.
No, and I think that we're going to see a similar start to this game that we saw in Game 1, at least from the Drumheller side. You remember their best period they played in Games 1 and 2 was the first period of Game 1. They came out guns a-blazing, and they're going to have to do that again tonight because they can't fall behind, because we've seen what Brooks can do once they get that early lead, like in Game 3 when they went up 2-0 3 minutes in, and Drum was never able to recover. So from a Bandit point of view, a fast start will be critical tonight, and you have to be, if you're a Bandit fan, you have to be encouraged by the fact that Connor Jean with 6 points in this series, he's been very impressive on home ice in this series. Will Guerin with the 2 goals on Tuesday night. So your big players are getting the big goals. And we talked about depth before this series. The Bandits, we think, have more depth than the Dragons. Well, maybe that depth needs to start showing itself here in Game 5, and maybe the Jammernick, Hancock, and Massey line can get going again. But don't forget, Mitch Benson. The Drumheller Memorial Arena is not the easiest place to be a goaltender. I thought he handled himself pretty well in Games 3 and 4, and now he's back in his the comfy confines of the CRA.
Final note just on desperation. We know we're going to see that from Drumheller tonight. We saw it in Game 4. The Bandits almost need to play like an elimination game for them, because if you're the Okotoks Oilers right now, you're just kind of rubbing your hands together. You're hoping tonight is as physical a game as possible, as rough and as nasty a game as it can be. And if you're an Okotoks person, you're hoping Drumheller wins so the series keeps on going. I mean, Okotoks is not only the #1 team in the league, but they made quick work of the Camrose Kodiaks, and they've got the rest advantage. So from a Brooks perspective, again, not that you want to think too long term, but it's almost got to be like a Game 7 for Brooks in this one too.
And Okotoks didn't have the easiest ride through Camrose. Yeah, it was a 4-game sweep, but as in true Camrose Kodiak fashion, they didn't make it easy on the Oilers. They were close games, especially in Game 4. We thought the Kodiaks might be able to steal one in overtime there. So this is critical for Brooks if they want to run with the Oilers in the final, the best team in the AJHL this season. In the regular season, then they need to get the rest they need and get that week before the South Final begins a week today, so you have to take care of business tonight. You want to avoid that trip to Drumheller on Sunday, because you give the Dragons that momentum, boy, at Memorial Arena, if there's another game, that's going to be a hard place to play.
Since the 2013 league final, the Bandits have only clinched a playoff series at home once, and it was last year's South Final against the Okotoks Oilers, which they won in overtime in Game 5 here in this building. We'll see if the Bandits can get it done tonight, or if the Drumheller Dragons can force this series back to the Drumheller Memorial. Puck drop tonight is scheduled for 7 o'clock.